We'll be delving into the educational impact COVID-19 has had through a dual focus, looking at both school students as well as university graduates.
Earlier this year, the global pandemic forced the lockdown of educational institutions, prompting major and most crucially unequal interruption in students' learning and assessments, with a well-documented correlation between attendance and achievement. Even the shortest of periods with schools shut erodes opportunities for development of social awareness as well as skill growth. Consequences exceed the short term, with inequality likely to rise due to the largest impact of school closures falling on the most disadvantaged of families, those of whom are facing challenges brought on by the economic crisis that indirectly impact educational attainment, including food insecurity and poverty. Families will have disparities in the amount of time they can devote to teaching, the skill set and knowledge of parents, and what resources are accessible. All of these factors will likely contribute towards an increase in inequality of human capital growth. A recent survey found that over 3/4 of worldwide learners believe that education will be fundamentally changed by this pandemic.
Now, I will focus on graduated students. Because of the equalizer COVID-19 policy, the minority of limited healthcare access. Therefore, international students will under the overwhelming pressure of discrimination, healthcare, and studying will over 55% of them presented a clinical score for at least one mental disorder. Research showed that the Chinese students spent much money on internet data and VPN, and British university staff found that the VPN provided by the institution for use in online classes was not very effective in China, which means the internet connectivity cannot well satisfy students' needs. Therefore, the unstable connectivity might influence their assessment and literature review.
Next, I'm going to talk about the impact of the two groups during a graduation year. Although students had to do their final task, had to assess the learning materials all online, students had to overcome all technical issues, including internet delay, new devices accessing, adapting online learning environment. The middle-class students are reported to spend more than 4 hours on online learning than working classes. 51% of middle-class students had close communication with their teachers and with high levels of taking part in live and recorded lessons. However, teachers in deprived school reported that a third of their students don't have adequate internet and electronic devices to learn from home.
Lastly, the influence both middle and working class students face after they graduate, including high unemployment rate, low job opportunities, etc. From BBC 2020 mentioned around a quarter of 18 to 24 years old young people have been furloughed. However, they may live back with their parents to save money, but also provide them more chance to focus on their last year's schoolwork. On the other hand, evidence suggests that working class students are more likely to stop their further studying because they lack the economic, social, and cultural capital possessed by their middle class peers. Well, according to a poll, over half of working and middle-class university applicants think coronavirus damaged their chance to get into their first place of university choice.
The economic repercussions of COVID-19 are likely to have a profound impact on social mobility, deepening pre-existing divisions, many of which were intensified by previous recessions and austerity policies. It's already known that time away from school, such as summer holidays, widens the attainment gap, and that disadvantaged students are twice as likely to leave formal education without English and Maths GCSEs compared to their better-off classmates. Close involvement of schools in teaching their students at a distance mitigates learning losses, helping to moderate the impact of family background on educational attainment and life prospects. Those of Pakistani and Bangladeshi backgrounds spend the lowest number of hours in schoolwork, as they're overrepresented among those who are not receiving any distance teaching. Schools less involved in ongoing learning often have fewer resources, or are in areas more affected by the pandemic. It's also worth noting that spending more time on schoolwork may facilitate learning, but it doesn't necessarily equate to learning. If students lack the proper resources and environment, even if more time is spent on schoolwork, less may be learnt. Public Health England released a report detailing the inequity of COVID-19's impact on minority ethnicities. Socioeconomic position, occupation, housing, pre-existing health conditions resulting from factors such as material deprivation, all interdependent elements born from structural and institutional racism, have led to exclusionary health policies that reinforce disparate health outcomes, which has subsequent bearing on educational attainment.
For arising and existing social justice issues as to international students, the discrimination is a long-existing issue, but the problems caused by the online study are emerging.
So what we found for the middle and working class students had similarities but also differences. On the same hand, both classes showed low job opportunities. The Suit and BBC both mentioned that the injustice brought by the pandemic is increasing, mainly for service and retail industries, which traditionally employ younger staff, including pubs, restaurants, etc., that has remained closed because of the lockdown.
Differently, the other difficulty for working class students is the parents' job problem. A study has shown that almost half of the working class women did not have working hours in April. Also, working class women's hours were reduced to zero in the first month of the confinement. They decreased the economic income of the working, which means that parents cannot support the further study of their graduated children.
The closure of schools coincided with the exam periods, resulting in the cancellation of GCSEs and A-levels for the entire 2020 cohort. To replace A-level public exams, OFQUAL awarded grades based on the teachers' predictions, student rankings, and an algorithm calculated using the school's previous results. widely criticised for exacerbating inequality by inordinate downgrading and making it virtually impossible for high-achieving students at historically poor-performing schools and predominantly state schools to be awarded top grades. The UK government U-turned this decision, allowing for the sole use of predicted grades. Even so, data shows that these are often inaccurate and that high achievers from disadvantaged backgrounds are still predicted lower grades than their more advantaged counterparts. In short, by replacing blind exams with teacher assessments, bias is surfaced and equality of opportunities is impaired, especially detrimental if the key qualification in question is required to enter higher education. Regardless, some students who satisfied university offers after the U-term were still unable to enrol for the upcoming academic year, having to defer their place due to oversubscribed courses, with gap years being inaccessible to many students who find themselves financially unstable and unemployed. This yet again hinders the less fortunate.
One of the biggest challenges of distance learning is ensuring access to adequate resources, including technology, broadband, a suitable study space, well-trained teachers familiar with online provisions, and free school meals for those eligible. Perhaps the government or an external organisation could set aside a fund dedicated to supplying students with the necessary equipment. Broadband providers should be encouraged to lift data caps. Teachers in deprived schools, especially, should be given the support and training for how to effectively deliver content online. Given the substantial evidence supporting the importance of tests for progress monitoring and learning, schools should attempt to postpone rather than skip internal assessments. Another possibility is increasing the pupil premium to assist schools in providing additional support and catch-up sessions for disadvantaged students. Private tuition agencies could also offer to connect tutors for free with those who would otherwise be unable to afford such interventions, helping to close the attainment gap between richer and poorer households. However, all of the above is secondary if students are relying on free school meals to ensure their physical well-being. Whilst schools were closed, the government launched a nationwide scheme providing such pupils with supermarket vouchers, Marcus Rashford being a very prominent and vocal campaigner. Overall, local and national authorities need to invest in schools in order to narrow the learning gap accelerated during the lockdown. Ideally, preventative measures should be identified in the event of future school interruptions should distance teaching be required again to ensure that vulnerable students are not exposed to further social inequalities.
Education environment in the UK during COVID-19 pushed the online learning market. It is mentioned that the challenges brought by COVID-19 are in educational institutions, that teachers transfer their work from classroom to digital platform almost overnight. From the teachers' perspectives, according to a research article, indicates that teachers feel panic, anxiety, and shock because of the immediate lockdown. However, schools were quick to reinsure staff and make arrangements for the abrupt switch to a virtual proportion of learning and teaching. This means that school involved communicating emails and additional training to their staff, like workshops provided by the use of Blackboard, Zooming, conducting and engaging students online, etc. Also, it is stated in a report that the teachers in this situation involve communicating routine and conditions at home and monitor each student's schoolwork, which can best help students and parents to keep learning in the home environment.
When teaching responsibilities has transferred to all parents, highly educated parents only had little impact. They may spend more time with their children, teach them individually, or hire online tutors. However, parents like single, minority groups, or low-educated parents may be challenged the most. They may not have enough time to teach their children, or have weak English language skills and less knowledge of the UK education system. This may let their children suffer relatively great hardship.
Described by the former UK Universities Minister, universities are expected to experience the $2.5 billion hole with a considerable loss of international enrollment. To solve this problem, firstly, the UK government announced a package of support, SURE, which consists of low-interest loans with long payback periods. Secondly, set up a hardship fund and a mental health support for the students with low socioeconomic status. Thirdly, the Education Secretary allotted additional growth for providers to recruit students. To support international students, the government designed a new immigration route for graduation international students to solve their work visa problem during the global pandemic.
Our references range from peer-reviewed journals found through the Bristol Online Library, as well as Google Scholar, to newspapers, the BBC, official reports from reputable research institutes, and UK government websites, all fairly credible and authoritative sources written and reviewed by established academics and researchers. Many of the research papers we initially stumbled across came from medical journals and/or were US-centered, with some more niche studies focused on parts of Asia and Africa, so we had to be careful and selective in our quoted statistics, making sure to use UK-relevant data, or otherwise we could be drawing invalid comparisons. It can be argued that certain sources may be slightly biased in not being entirely non-political. However, subjective professional criticism provides a valuable insight into public opinion. Almost all references are incredibly recent, published this year, many across the past few months, and so the information is quite up to date considering how quickly COVID-19 circumstances change. To sum everything up, LSE publicised a report in May this year outlining that economic and educational inequality for young people will be wider than ever due to a lack of social mobility. Evidence overwhelmingly suggests that the COVID-19 pandemic has deepened pre-existing inequalities and vulnerabilities, not just confined to the education system, but also within our wider society. Therefore, policies enacted should be just as holistic.